Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about revising your paper, and I'm going to go about this in a very particular way. Um, I have four different approaches to revising, and of course, you could take every paper through all four of these. I'm not going to be quite that mean. We're going to do one at a time, and we're going to do one for each of the four papers we write in class. So the first one is revising for audience. And if you look again at the rhetorical triangle, this is a very big part of the success or failure of any article, whether it's the one you're writing to analyze something, or the one that you're writing for class, or the one that you're reading, um, all your research and things. When we look at writing, um, it gets a little bit fuzzy sometimes because we don't get to ask questions directly to the author, right? When we sit and talk to somebody, or even if we're doing a text conversation, any kind of conversation like that on social media, even, we can ask questions. We can ask for clarification. We can fill in details if we're on the other side of things. But when we're reading, especially when we're reading scholarly articles or um, peer reviewed articles and things like that, it's sometimes very difficult to get at what the audience needs. And so, especially when there are multiple levels of audience. And so we have to look at how we set our papers up, how we work through things. And that's what this first kind of revising is going to help you get at. You have a handout, revising for audience, and I'm just going to kind of walk through that and then get at the questions at the end. So writers have to provide a context for what they're reading, for what their readers um, can look at. This meaning and context creates most of the problems for young writers. You're all good talkers, right? Especially when you're with your trusted friends or family. But writing clear, meaningful, elaborated prose is rather more difficult. Um, the best kind of example of this is, for me anyway, for me to explain this to you, you have different ways of talking depending upon who you're talking to, right? You don't talk to your very strict aunt or grandmother the same way you talk to your best friend, okay? Um, if you had, say, you went to a party, okay? Whatever kind of party you want to imagine, and the next day you're going to explain this party to your parents or your very strict grandmother, um, and you're going to explain it to your best friend who wasn't there. I think the details that you choose from that party are going to be a little bit different depending upon who you're talking to. And this is the same idea that I want to get across with writing for audience. There are folks that you will write for, like your instructors and peer reviewers and things, that are going to be looking for certain aspects of your writing. And then there are going to be other folks who just look at, okay, did you do the work? Yes. Okay, fine, you're good. So you want to make sure that there's a layer in there. First of all, we write for ourselves, and we have to understand what we're writing and what we're saying, and we have to be able to put things in an order that makes sense to us, okay? And to do things that we enjoy, or that we understand, or that we got a kick out of, however you want to say it. And then you have to read it from your audience's perspective. Okay, so here's my analysis of this article. I thought it was really interesting, or I really thought it was boring. It put me to sleep. I had to like put it down and come back and get some coffee or whatever your caffeine of choice is, and I really had a hard time getting through it. Okay, so how much of that can you put in your paper? How much of that do you need to keep out? It depends upon your audience. Now, if you're writing for a peer review, but you're writing for a peer review that is also going to be graded, you need to make sure that you're getting at what the article actually says more so than what you feel about it. And so you can personalize, of course, and you should. Um, I expect that every paper I read, whether we all do the same article or not, is going to be a little different. There are things that you'll pick up on that the next person won't, or there are things that you didn't think were important that somebody else thought was, the epitome of importance. And that's okay. As long as you can, excuse me, you can show through your examples that this is important to the paper. It's not easy to see things from your audience's perspective. We don't have a lot of practice in that, but it's worth the time and it's worth the practice, for lots of reasons, not just to get a decent grade on the paper, but being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes is a very big skill. It helps in all kinds of situations. Um, Everything from, do you want fries with that kind of work, to empathy and sympathy for people who are in our circles or close to them, that go through stuff, because we all go through stuff. Now, this particular set, to build and develop your skill of empathy, you make yourself hear from the point of view of a person who does not live under your circumstances. And sometimes that's a huge shift, and sometimes it's just a matter of going, oh, yeah, I remember when I did that. I was 12 once too. It's been a while for me, but I remember 12. Um, the bottom of the paper has some questions for you to answer. And when I assign these, I want you to think about your current paper in its current form. Okay. And so answer the questions. Who is your audience? And yes, your audience is your instructor and your peers in the room, but it's also, if you think about it, it's also whoever's going to read this ever, which gets a little bit weird sometimes. What do they already know about the topic? Okay, what are the facts and ideas they know? Make a list. Okay, they know, and for some of the assignments that we use this for, um, you'll have everybody's reading the same article. So, of course, they already know what the article says, but make a list. Okay, they know it's this, 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 and this. Okay, as well as their attitudes toward the subject. How do you think they feel? Um, it's more difficult in an online class than a seated class, of course, to know what your peers are thinking, but put yourself in their shoes. What do you want them to know? This is also a list of the things that you found important or the ways that you're evaluating based on the criteria. Okay, make a list. So here's what they know. Here's what you want them to know. How do you bridge that gap? Okay, what's the best way to bridge that gap? Okay, so I'm going to use examples. I'm going to show them where it is in the article. Maybe it's on page 3, maybe it's on page 2, that kind of thing. And what's the best way to convince them that your ideas are valid or at least worth considering? We all know that we hate to be talking down to, right? If somebody treats you like you're 2, you're less likely to want to deal with them than if somebody treats you like you're a peer with reasonable intelligence. Okay, so treat them like a peer with reasonable intelligence, right? On this assignment, make sure that you're making it useful for you. This is going to help you revise your paper. And so, even though you're going to have a peer review and your instructor is going to look at it, you need to be able to internalize and figure out, okay, this section's really good. This one's really light on detail, so I need to add to this because my reader needs to understand why the particular article works this way. Okay, so be as detailed as you can be. That way you'll have more stuff to work from to revise your paper. Okay, let me know if you have questions. You know how to get a hold of me.